Phase 2, sitting in the classroom on the second day, I learned an important lesson. I was ordered to go to the cookhouse and fetch a tea urn, a big, heavy tub full of tea. I rolled my eyes and muttered a bit under my breath, typical soldier behaviour. To my surprise, one of the trainees, a sergeant, bellowed at me and called me a number of names, including telling me I was an old woman, and said this attitude was why I was going to fail. He was wrong, but I came to really respect him. That bollocking was so vociferous and humiliating, deservedly, that it completely changed my mindset. I never belly ached again. I learned that not every task has an obvious purpose. I learned that initiative matters more than instruction. I learned that hesitation wastes time. I learned that even simple jobs are being watched by the staff. Later, I realised it wasn't about the tea urn at all. It was about how I reacted when given something unclear, something inconvenient, something easy to dismiss. I learned that in training, nothing is accidental. I made that mistake of complaining quietly, but I learned a very good lesson. Shut up, do what you were asked, and expedite the task with your best ability. That separates the best soldiers from a failure of a soldier. That day was a black mark against me. I had to rub out. That week was all yonking on hills, reading maps, running and PT in the day, and enlarging distances in pairs or groups every night. This section was drawn from the SAS Hills section in their first week or two, but we did not have such difficult terrain or distances to manage, and no fan dance, penny fan, of course. However, everyone had blisters. I had 2 on one foot, one of which covered my entire heel. We had 2 Navy medics on the course, and they were great at helping guys with smaller injuries. The only way to get rid of blisters so you can run the next day is by cutting off the proud skin and letting the fluid run out. This was not so painful, but the second part included spraying some aerosol they had in their kit onto the area. It was so painful that men were screaming and crying. I remember jumping up and down for several minutes in the block. I've never forgotten that. But our feet were hard the next day to carry on again. Although we were being observed, I did not feel as if the staff were trying to make us quit, and they called us by our names, which is unlike the way that staff interact at SAS training in the first weeks, I believe. That's one of the reasons it is the toughest training in the world. During that phase, we did a lot of map reading, weapons training, and PT during the daytime, and running the hills at night, growing further and further distances and carrying more weight. Phase 3. The final training exercise was a place we were taken called Winterberg in September 1980. It is a huge forest in North Rhine-Westphalia. Snow, sheet and rain fell every single day of the 10 days or so, and at about 700 metres above sea level, it was a cold and unhospitable place. Today, part of the area is a popular ski resort. I was surprised that I felt well and enjoyed the soldiering we did there against various enemies. We did lots of ambushes in a great deal of bad weather. It's easy for soldiers to get hypothermia very quickly and make bad, sometimes dangerous decisions. Sometimes they don't even know they have it. I made a patrol base on Dartmoor during torrential rain a few years later, and an American Marine and a Brit were sharing a bivvy which filled up with water. They slept in it during the night because we were all on our chin straps. In the morning, they were laughing and stumbling around like idiots and thought everything was great. The rest of us and the staff had to get a grip of them and get them into dry clothes and plenty of hot brews down them because they had hypothermia. But Winterberg was our final test, and we were followed everywhere by the staff. The weather conditions were so bad, I heard several people just break and rap completely. When we arrived at the huge forest, it was raining into the snow, and this time we had probably OS maps of the area, but like usual we were dropped off from a truck with only our forest RP, rendezvous point, marked in the map. We had no idea where we were, and unfortunately for me and Tony, my fellow private, we were in a brick or four-man patrol with two sergeants. I knew little of one of them. He wore a real Special Forces moustache. Let's call him Tom. The other sergeant, DR, I had noticed him bluff, prevaricate and stall his way through various activities, so both Tony and I were sure things were going to go south and some point. We all looked at the map while standing on the edge of a humping great hill and agreed the route to the RP. Things went well for a while, and as we approached the RV, we were in a thick wooded area and we were attacked by heavy fire. I remember BM and friend of mine rushing toward the protection of stacked logs like crazy, while the training staff shouted at him, "Get that fucking Bergen off." For us that went well, and we were given a new RP some miles away across some mountainous forested hills. It had been raining for a while, then begins to snow. We noticed that we were humping up and down fucking hills, which was probably not necessary. We stopped our glorious leaders and questioned the sense of direction. It was immediately noticeable that DR, the leader, was in the stages of hypothermia, blasé, dismissive, and most worrying, he was lost. Tony and I took over, we plotted the contours and kicked on with the other two following. We had to cross a large area of long-felled trees, which meant we had to either stride over the smaller trunks and climb over the big ones. It was getting dark by now, and both of DR and Tom could not cope. Tony and I shared their kit between ourselves, even though I was also carrying the gun and Tony the wireless. The two idiots kept stopping for rests, and inside the forest canopy it was now too dark to see, and the rain was pouring down with a vengeance. It was clear that they could not continue, so we spent one of the most miserable nights of my life. We all sat with our heads against a big tree and held our ponchos over each of us and waited until first night. No chance of making a fire or even cooking anything hot due to the light and smell, so we waited. Luckily, we were not the last patrol into the RP, as another group with too much confidence and too little care had struck up for who knows where after leaving the truck. We watched them happily going the wrong way in a distance. Both DR and Tom rapped but had to stay in the forest. When the exercise test ended, both Tony and I were interrogated about the events of that day. That was much later. Every day and night we prepared and executed ambushes, set up patrol bases, assaulted given areas and took care of admin, changing socks and wet clothing as best we could in almost torrential rainfall and sleet. Every time we could get a little sleep, the staff threw something more at us. We would set up in a patrol base every day, usually after long reconnaissance patrols to contact or section attacks. Often we would get attacked while we were in a patrol base, and everyone knew the protocol: get to a prearranged grid reference or RP and take up defensive areas again. I remember being with Mick running through a forest over thick fallen branches and bracken, and it was difficult to even lift our feet higher enough to avoid tripping. We were so tired because we were separated into twos or sometimes groups of four, and our radios often failed us. We had a means to make contact silently, which we later used in Northern Ireland, called dead or life letterboxes. Of course, our boss knew where we were holed up or our observation posts were. We also knew the nearest road or tracks were in which a vehicle would not look out of place. We would use flare stands, green plastic sticks with short arms. We glued tiny cat's eyes onto the sticks, so if our staff were looking for it, they looked at verges in the sides of roads and pick up the cat's eyes in their headlamps. I think that other folks would think it was actually a cat. We would wait in the undergrowth and a vehicle would stop, give us either new equipment, sometimes hot food in a Hessian sack. It took seconds. That was called a life letter or letterbox. A dead letterbox was when an item was left in a planned area and we covertly acquired said item, but nobody was there. Because we were sometimes in an OP for 10 days or so, we may need medical supplies or various pieces of equipment. Sometimes we got hot soup as the weather was so bad and we could only eat cold rations. The final exercise in Winterberg finished when we were told to find a laying up place and try to last out the cold, rain and snow for half a day. This weather really tested people, but prepared most of us for the same conditions we would experience in the border country in Ireland. In our briefing, we were told that what was a teaching exercise had grown into a survival exercise. A few guys and a few others who had not wrapped already were failed after the last exercise, and we were down to a patrol of 23 guys and 4 staff.